All right. So we just listened to Lorna Shore, Pain Remains. Now we're going to talk about a little bit. I will give you my little thoughts, initial thoughts, track breakdowns, and stuff like that. And then we'll go into a little deeper discussion with Jordan and their thoughts and all that, and then some ratings. So I will go ahead and go first. So first of all, I will say that Lorna Shore is a band that that style of deathcore is just not usually my type of thing. You know, I'm not that's kind of me with a lot of deathcore. It's more of a live setting thing. I don't know if it's the blast beats or what. There's just a lot of fucking blast beats. There's a lot of fucking blast beats in this album. It's a very, very fast album, 90% of the time. So, you know, I just don't really listen to them a lot. But I am very familiar with them. So I didn't have a lot of high expectations for this, and you know, all the fucking hype from To the Hellfire and all that. Though hearing some of the singles that they put out before this album drop kind of actually gave me some hope, because I noticed that they brought more melodic stuff, and I thought that was really cool. Because I do think that while these people are very talented, I do think they kind of ruined deathcore by just having that fucking song and everyone being like, oh, I want to sound like that. Now everybody sounds like that, and everyone tries to do demon snarls and tries to one-up Will, and it's just a landscape of hell, and it's just, I hate it. But anyway, so let's talk about the album. All right, so first of all, I did want to note that I don't know if it was maybe it might have just been YouTube compression on the first track or something, because I feel like it waned off a little bit, but not really. There was a weird mix to this. I don't know if they're just trying to go for that blackened mix. It's just except this is like way more produced, obviously. Very treble heavy, lots of treble, lots of high end, not enough low end. Like there's a lot of 808s in here, but like they don't like stand out. Like you got to really like listen for it. It just doesn't like hit you, and I don't know what the deal is with that. So that's kind of a disappointment for me. I like a lot of low end to kind of make it boom and bloom and doom and gloom. Anyways, so I'll talk about I'll talk about some of the instrumentals wise before I go into the track breakdowns here, because I've got a lot to say about the track breakdowns. I think the drums were a good standout on this album. I think the drumming was great, minus the blast beats. You know, that's just, if you take away the blast beats, I think the snare, they had a really good snare in here. Like when they got the slower stuff or breakdowns and stuff, they really made that snare pop, and it really stood out. Lots of cymbal work that was really nice. And they just, all of the drums stood out very well. But also the guitar. I think the guitar was really cool. They did have some nice riffs in here that were very like metalcore sounding, just like I said, very sped up, you know, so it had some like rhythm and nice movement to it, but they were just like really fast and kind of fleeting. They kind of just came and went really fast, but again, that's kind of part of the style, I guess, you know. It's this really fast, you know, blistering speed of deathcore. Lots of solos in here, which I like. I like the very 90s metal, 80s metal, even maybe a little bit of 70s in there too. Very nice sounding solos. Kind of reminded me of All Shall Perish, actually. I know someone said Winds of Plague, but I got a lot of All Shall Perish in here. And I think honestly the solos served as a really good reprieve from all the blast beats and fastness, more than the breakdowns, in my opinion. I actually really liked the solos and stuff. So yeah, but I'll talk about some of the track breakdowns and stuff here. So the first track was okay. I think it was a little too long, which, okay, the whole album is a little too long. There's a lot of filler in this album. It's a little bloated. They definitely could have taken off a couple of tracks, for sure. But it is what it is. They didn't, and that's what they did. So it's 7 minutes. I think it's a little too long for first track just to jump in, and you know, it's kind of daunting. It's just like this album is just this big fucking castle that you're fucking looking at. You're just like, oh fuck, I gotta go in there and That's what this album is. It's a journey to the top of the fucking castle, and it's got a very hard start to it. But
A little bit of Castlevania.
yeah. Then you get to Into the Earth. Into the Earth was a decent track. Heard that before the album came out. I like that there's this they have a bright moment in there where it like picks up, not like an octave, but it just like it gets like really bright, and they bring the chorus back, but it's like really super just pitched up. I don't know the fucking correct term, okay? It's just very bright sounding.
Key change.
Yeah. Which they bring back later, but I'll come back to that again. And then Sun Eater, which is I think one of my favorite tracks of the album, because it's another very bright sounding track. It's very melodic, lots of pretty synth in there. And I think those type of things that they do kind of stands out more than the heavier parts, in my opinion. So then you get to Curse to Die. Also, again, starts very bright. Lots of melodic riffs in there. Again, very metalcore-y. Then Soulless Existence, which is their slowest song on the album. It's more of a mid-tempo. So it's kind of a nice break. It's right in the middle of the album. Another great solo in it as well. But again, it just feels a little too long. There's a lot of tracks on here that just, I don't know if they could have just taken out a chorus or two and just cut it down a little bit, man. In my opinion, that's just what I think it needs. Apotheosis is next. First listening through the first half of it, I started writing down. It kind of felt like a filler track again. At this point, it was like the same formula of the super fast blast beats and shit. It was just like, okay, the same thing again. All right. Nothing special about it until you get to the breakdown, which had like a lot of like 808s in it. Like these ones actually like stood out, and I was like, oh, okay, they put in a little 808, so that was nice. I think if they would have put that breakdown, cut the whole track, just put the breakdown somewhere else, and again, make the album shorter, I think it would have helped from that. I think that track was just, aside from the breakdown, just was nothing special. Wrath, again, another track in the middle that was just another, kind of felt like a filler track at first, and then again you get to the fucking breakdown and they do some cool shit in the breakdown, and you're just like, why? I don't know. So in this one they do like these weird, that's the one where like the 808 does some like weird shit. It like gets like really low and like, I don't know, it made some weird sounds, but it was kind of cool. It kind of sound like they were like messing with it, like it was like actually like a progressive 808. I don't know if that's a fucking thing, but it was kind of cool. So again, just two tracks in a row that were just like nothing burgers of songs until the breakdowns, and just, I don't know. I feel like they could have cut those out, put the breakdowns in there somewhere else, because I did like the breakdowns. And then we get kind of to the close of the album here with the trilogy. So singularly, the first track, I like the first track. I'd heard that one, most of it, before. Again, he does some actual like mid vocals in here, more opposed to the lows and highs that are in most of the rest of the album. He does some mids, so I like that little, do that a little bit more. And then they actually start doing some more synth work. Like the whole album has a lot of orchestral type stuff, a lot of organy sounds, but this one actually has like a 80s style like synth in there. Like it feels like an actual synth. So I thought that was really cool and kind of gives that trilogy a theme. Okay. So then on to the second part of the trilogy. Synth comes back again. The synth is in the whole trilogy. I like that. It ties it together a little bit. And then they also bring back that pickup that they did from Into the Earth, where it like blooms into this. They do the key change, as Jordan says, and it's so it kind of just, it's a nice little standout thing that they do, and I kind of like that. And then the third one, what I think was kind of the weakest part of the trilogy, though it did end the album well. It just kind of, the first half of that last song, the song's like 9 fucking minutes again, and the first half of that song is just kind of more of the blackened formula bullshit, including the lyrics. That's another thing I haven't even talked about yet, which I'll come back to in a second. The lyrics were just kind of, the first two parts of that trilogy were very like emotional feeling, talking about lost love and stuff, and felt, you know, purpose. And then you get into the more just, you know, existential type shit that just, it's kind of just wordplay in this kind of genre, I think. In my opinion, I don't think those lyrics just speak to me. I don't know what it is. So that kind of was disappointing, though it did end really well. It brought back some of the synth. It brought in as another very nice solo, very pretty sounding melodies in there. So it did kind of tie it together. Just again, a little too long, a little too bloated. That's kind of the theme of the whole album, in my opinion. And so I guess I'll mention the lyrics. I'm almost done here. The lyrics, like I said, the whole album, I had most of the lyric videos pulled up, and I read the whole album. It's just something about those style of lyrics, the blackened stuff. It's all existential shit. Feels like it's like from the fucking like 1300s, and they're in a castle, and it just I don't get it. It just doesn't work for me. It's just like sounds fancy to sound fancy. I don't feel a lot of meaning from that type of stuff. There's some moments, but other than that, not really. And then last but not least, the breakdowns. So breakdowns are cool. I love breakdowns. I'm heavy hardcore person. Everyone tells me all I love is heavy music. I don't like light stuff. Honestly, the breakdowns were kind of the weakest part of the album for me. Yeah, they're cool. They do some cool stuff, but they kind of break away from the songs a little too much. Like, I know that's kind of the purpose of a breakdown. Whew, I'm talking really fast, huh? I just wish that they kind of blended it in with the melodies and stuff a little bit more. Made it part of the songs like the solos did. You know, the solos kind of slow down the track, but have still that pretty melodies and stuff and synth and stuff. I don't think they really did that until the last track. The last track had the synth and stuff, and it was blended really well. But the rest of the album, the breakdowns just kind of, you know, slow, heavy, do some heavy snarly shit, but it just didn't have any of the other parts of the song. So I think it was just a little bit too much of a breakaway. I wish they would have just blended it in, made it just kind of flow a little bit better. They just didn't really, it was just like throwing a breakdown, have a breakdown is really all it was. Which, you know, as a misconception from most people about this type of music, heavy music, is like, oh, that's just what a breakdown is. It's just heavy, you know. No, it doesn't have to be. You can make it incorporate rhythms and melodies from other parts and make it kind of feel more special, and I think it was missing that. But overall, I think it was still actually fairly decent. I think it was a good, there's a lot of good music in here, just a really, really bloated. But other than that, like, I still had a lot of really good moments, and I think there was a lot of, I'm glad they had a lot of the melodic stuff. I think that is their best suit. I think that is their best stuff here. So I actually really appreciate that. So Jordan, finally, what are your thoughts?
All right, I'll start off by saying this album isn't really too bad. It's like you said, it's pretty decent. But it is also very, very bloated. I feel like the length is not very justified. I feel like it's just kind of long to feel epic and seem bigger. And there definitely is a lot of filler. So I'll say there's a couple of songs that I definitely would get rid of. Overall, I'd say maybe Into the Earth, Apotheosis, and Wrath definitely could have been left off. I think having it as maybe like a 7-song or like album, and then having like, maybe they could have just like split up the first song and have the like intro be like an intro song, and have it a little bit spaced out, and then keep it a little bit more concise. And I definitely think this would have been definitely higher on my list. What is here is very, very good. I definitely like a lot of this stuff. I wasn't really thinking that I was gonna hate it really per se. I mean, we were just kind of memeing around and kind of like just joking a little bit, but I feel like what is here is it's on the right track to be very very good. I think overall the mix was, I did like the mix, but there was a little bit of like I don't know. I feel like maybe on the first song, the guitars, they kind of blended in with the synths a little bit too much, and I really
Hmm.
couldn't make them out. But overall, that, I think the mix kind of fixed itself on that a little bit. Um, the synths are definitely very like really, really, really loud in the mix. I think they're probably the loudest thing other than like the kick
Yeah.
and maybe like the snare, and I guess the guitars are kind of loud a little bit whenever they do stick out, but I feel like they just kind of do their thing, and there's not really like a lot of standout riffs. I think there's a couple like on I think it's the Pain Remains Part 2. There was the main riff to that was really cool. I really
Yeah.
like that one. Um, solos, yeah, the solos are really, really good. I think a couple of them kind of lean too much into like just like the very shreddy solos, but the other, I'd say maybe 80% of the solos are very melodic, and I feel like they very, very much complement the music, and they bring a lot of melody and a lot more brightness into there, which is really cool for something so like dark and heavy sounding.
Yeah.
Um, it definitely really needs that to kind of lift things up and keep things from being too dark. I feel like y- um, I feel like a lot of the breakdowns, like you said, are they're just breakdowns for the sake of breakdowns. And I think a lot of the songs, they have like two breakdowns in most of the songs, and I feel like a lot of those second breakdowns are really not warranted. I feel like they just they sound very similar. They all do the same thing. There's not a lot of variance between there. There's a little bit here and there, kind of like with the cymbals and stuff, and like the lyrics over the breakdowns, and like the different like tones and vocal
Yeah.
techniques that he uses over them. But I feel like a lot of the breakdowns are very just kind of one note, and I feel like they didn't really need to focus too much on those whenever they did. Um, but then again, on the rest of the album, they really focus on a lot of the blast beats and just like the fast stuff. And I really didn't think that was all too great, because a lot of it just kind of blends together, and a lot of the songs kind of drag on, and I feel very, very samey. And then adding that on top of the breakdowns that sound kind of very similar, it just kind of it really drives home to me that some of these songs definitely could have been left out or shortened up. Definitely a lot of
Yeah.
choruses that could have been cut.
Yeah, about the breakdowns, it seems like they kind of just want to be. It's like they just want to remind you that they're deathcore. Like they just want to still be classified
Yeah,
as deathcore.
like they want to have that, you know. And I understand that, but I feel like you can do a lot more with it to
Hmm.
really bring those out and make them more memorable, because I really don't think there is any memorable breakdowns on this. Like even with to the Hellfire, like that has the whole like weird snarly vocal thing, and like that's really not on here at all. Um,
Yeah.
which I kind of appreciate, but then
Yeah.
I
Thank
also
you.
kind of think it kind of takes away from it. I think there could have been a little bit of that in here, maybe on one song, and kind of like bring back a little motif, you know, and have that kind of connective tissue. I feel like that could have been a cool thing for like the fans, but they really didn't go too far into that, and I feel like they didn't really think of it too hard. Which, I mean, whenever they are writing music that is this dense and there's so much going on, I feel like there's a little bit too much of a focus on different parts that um, don't really supplement the music. They just kind of are there for the sake of it. So
Yeah.
overall, I think this was very good. It's not amazing. It's not great. Um, I'd say I feel like maybe half of this album I really enjoyed, and then half of this I thought it dragged on a little bit too much. So maybe on the next one they can tighten it up a little bit and
Yeah.
just really hone in on the songwriting and like making the songs more memorable and stick out on their own. But otherwise, I feel like they did a really good job. So. Yeah.
What did you think about the lyrics, the lyricism? Did that work for you, or?
Now, see, that's another point I kind of skipped over in my mind a little bit. I feel like when you do have the little bit of emotional lyrics and stuff that they did, it kind of gets buried in the rest of the album. I feel like just because it is so jarring to have everything else be so like very wordy and dark and like, you know, melodramatic, but then having that like very emotional thing, it kind of like it doesn't really mesh that well with me. And I feel like whenever you do have like just a bunch of blast beats and like snarly vocals, you really get a lot of that emotion like lost through the lyrics, just because you can't really feel that emotion. And I feel like that's just kind of like a thing with like these kind of vocals, is that like you just can't. I guess what I'm saying is that there are some vocal styles that are just intrinsically very emotional feeling, and this isn't that.
Yeah.
And I feel
like how he did the mids
buried.
in the first like part of that.
Yeah. Whenever
If he
they
would've done
did
more of
that, yeah, it really like, because it is so jarring, and because the jarring nature of the lyrics and that at the same time, it really stands out. But then whenever you look at the rest of the album, it stands out kind of like in a weird way, where I feel like it kind of makes sense within the three trilogy tracks. But then again, like on the third one, it kind of gets lost anyways. So I feel like they definitely tried a little bit, but it definitely got lost in the mix a lot.
Yeah. If they would have made it, if they would have made it more like concept-y, like around that trilogy, like make the whole album feel kind of like a lead up to that, which they might have done, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, there wasn't really like enough connective tissue between the trilogy and then the rest of the album. I feel like the rest of the album was more of just like Greek mythology, you know, type of like storytelling and stuff. But then you have like kind of like just more modern feeling kind of emotional lyrics. It just kind of doesn't work for me a little bit. But I do think the last song did wrap up the album, like you said. It kind of did have that epic feeling, but it didn't have the emotional feeling to tie it with the rest of the trilogy.
Yeah.
And the rest of the trilogy just kind of like is its own thing, which I feel like that could have just been like an EP on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, all right. So what about rating it? What would you rate this?
See, I don't want to give it a 6. I really don't want to give it a 6. I don't think it deserves that.
No,
but
I don't think so.
I think it's definitely a very solid 7. And that kind of reinforced it, because I think maybe 3 of the songs could have been left off the album, and so 3 out of 10, you know, that's a 7. So I feel like that's a perfect score for it for me.
So yeah, this album definitely, I think, is just like I said, there's a lot of bloat in here. I think someone in the chat said about taking you couldn't take off songs for it because it only has 10, but
I think you can. You can still have it because even if you take off 3, like Into the Earth, Apotheosis, and Wrath, that's only 15 minutes off of the hour-long album. There's still 45 minutes of the album if you take those off. So
yeah,
I feel like there's enough in those songs in itself. Like I said, the first song could have been cut, like with like the first part being like an intro track, and then like taking off those 3 songs, and it would have been still 8 tracks, 45 minutes, and it would have been, I feel like, definitely a lot more streamlined.
Yeah. But so, that being said, with the bloatedness, I definitely think there was parts that they could just flat out cut. Even on the third part of the trilogy, the first half of that song just feels like the rest of the album and not as much as part of the trilogy, in my opinion. All that being said, not caring about the lyrics either, I think there are a lot of bright moments in here and a lot of cool riffs and a lot of melody that kind of surprised me. So as much as I meme on this band, this might surprise you. I think I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I think, if they definitely tighten it up a lot and incorporate those breakdowns, I know that their fan base, it feels like they kind of just cater the breakdowns to their already fan base. Yeah, to the Hellfire, yeah, here's something heavy. If they kind of just, fuck the fans, let's play with it a little bit more, make it a little more melodic, blend the breakdown and heavy stuff into the already fast and craziness the album. It doesn't have to be that ridiculous. I think they could have something a little bit more special than all the other bands that try to sound like Lorna Shore. They could get a 9 and maybe even a 10, especially if they do more of the lean into that trilogy part stuff that they did. So I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it was an enjoyable listen. I could see myself coming back to some of this, some of it not, but I think what is here is a little surprising. So yeah, good job to Lorna Shore.